Hey, on this episode of Gun Talk Nation, two guys from Aero Precision, Matt Griffin and Kirk Foreman. We're going to talk about what's new with Aero, we're talking about gun builds, and I'm going to pick a fight. This Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Franklin Armory, ATN Optics, and Ballistic Advantage. All right, welcome in to Gun Talk Nation. Today on Gun Talk Nation, if you're watching this, you're going to notice it looks a little different, and if you're listening to it, go watch us on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. But we are on the set of our new show, Build Box, and we're going to tell you more about that. But today on the show, we've got a couple guys from Aero Precision, Matt Griffin, Kirk Foreman. Welcome in.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. So you guys flew down to Louisiana to help us out with this new season, new show that we're doing, Build Box, which is really all about doing gun builds. And Aero is probably one of the companies that really has helped popularize doing gun builds so far, specifically to the AR platform. More things to come. Yep. But
we can get to that later.
We'll get to that. We'll talk about that. So gun builds are interesting, and I've said I have a secret goal about doing this show where the premise of Build Box is we have competitors building guns, judges judging them, shooting the guns, picking a winner. You understand the format. You've seen different shows like this, but nobody would do one with building guns, so we did it. It's amazing what was funny to me this week, and we're not going to reveal anything yet because this is a show that will be out on the Outdoor Channel in October is when it starts. But what was funny to me is how all of us, the judges, the competitors, who are all gun people, can nerd out about talking about the different options and the different ways of building an AR, huh, Kirk?
Yeah, no, it's there's an abundance of options out there, and with that comes an abundance of opinions.
Yeah.
So, you get a bunch of smart gun builders in a room, not saying I'm smart, but everybody else. And you can have some really, really heated discussions about the finer points of that.
Yeah. I mean, because most people go, this one was an AR style build. We would go, it's an AR, like whatever. Yeah. And they were like, we're talking about buffer tube, buffer weight. We're talking about gas port and measuring that. We're talking about overgassed, undergassed. We're talking about, there's so many things, right? Matt, you guys have helped so many people kind of get into gun building. What do you guys hear from customers about doing my first build and where they take it?
Yeah, people either go one way or the other. They either go with completes or they go, I'm going to do it all myself. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes people will do the completes and they'll get the hang of it, and then they'll go, wait, I wanted to switch out my safety, or I wanted to switch out my trigger, and then they start to kind of unpack it and they go, wait, it's not that hard. And then maybe for their next build they'll get stripped parts, and then they'll really start picking things apart, and you kind of just like, you get your feet under you a little bit, and then it's like, oh, I can do this. It's not that hard, and it allows you to just you can take parts from everywhere and build it exactly how you want it, and it's like, yeah, it's just easy. It's not as hard as it looks once you kind of understand the platform.
Well, there's a reason why AR builds work, and there's uniformity to it, right, Kirk?
Yeah, so that's the big thing, that being, a standard issue service rifle for so long that's now one of the most prolific rifles in the world. That definitely helps, and there's one spec, other platforms that doesn't necessarily exist, but the AR-15 specifically and its variants, there's kind of one spec that the parts have to fall into to maintain compatibility across the board. Yeah. So that's where you get all those options, and it's something very unique to kind of that platform. We see it elsewhere, but nowhere quite as intense and pure as with the AR and its variants.
Yeah, so if someone is building a safety selector or a mag catch or an upper and a lower, I was going to say have to. I guess they don't have to adhere to these specs, but they all do stay within spec. So you can just interchange all this stuff.
It's never ending.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, this build's done. And then, a week later, it's like, well, I saw this and I want to see how it goes. And then
Yeah.
it just is like it's a snowball of options.
Reminds me of Jeep Wranglers
Right.
or Harley Davidsons, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, most people don't leave their Jeep Wrangler stock.
And then
It's
once
like
they do,
right off the bat.
it's like, oh, I have 37s now, and this bumper rubs, so
Yeah.
I need a new bumper, or I need to cut the
Right.
fenders, or
Yep.
Yeah.
like it's always something.
What always gets me is I'll find a new part that I like. Like I've built a lot of rifles, and I have kind of a general formula I follow. It changes a little bit from rifle to rifle depending on the application, but I'll find a new part that I like that's kind of universally applicable, and then it's like slowly I'm swapping out that
Then
part
you're
in all my
upgrading,
builds.
you like it?
Yeah, and I'm always trying new stuff. I like to see, this is kind of an ever-evolving market, right? So it's always cool to try the new stuff and kind of be on that cutting edge and find out if it works or it doesn't. I think farming your own opinions on that stuff is super important. So
What do you tell someone that thinks that's crazy? Like building your own gun, I mean, is it safe? Is it possible? All that stuff. I mean, what do you tell people?
Well, I think getting informed is paramount, right? You want to be safe about it, and there's definitely wrong ways to build rifles, right? Yeah. So the first step is getting informed, but I think it's important because it gives you a very intimate understanding of your rifle or pistol accordingly, and kind of the mechanics of it. And on top of that, you're kind of tailoring it to you. So if you do your research and know what you want, you can kind of get that to where it's an optimal tool for you and what you're using it for. I'm very big on use case, right?
Yeah.
And I think building allows you to kind of tailor it more for whatever use case you're doing. There's not one right answer. If there was, we would only be selling one rifle, right?
Yeah.
So knowing kind of how you're building, what you're building for, and then approaching it kind of more calculated is a very good way to go, and it's going to probably make you happier in the long term and save you a little bit of money.
Well, and you kind of said too, when you start building it, you start understanding that gun so much more. Because if you buy one off the shelf, you might go, man, ARs are fun. Yes, they are. But then you start realizing you can make this gun run even better, whether it's changing out the brake or changing the way it's gassed and all these other things where you start getting kind of picky about it.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there are great shooters that are just great shooters and they can shoot any gun, but the elite Daniel Horner or Jerry Michalik or whatever, they're going to be running a gun that shoots very soft. There's not as much felt recoil for them. They're able to have those follow-up shots, and when you see them going pop, 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 pop on a target and it looks super impressive, yes, they are absolutely the best shooters out there, but their guns are tuned.
Yeah, and that goes back to that use case thing again. I think that's a super important principle to grasp as you're approaching a new build. Like what they would build is different than what somebody who's using them for like coyote hunting or like duty rifles. That's like they're not the same build.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to understand that stuff and kind of approach it with this is what my end goal is. This is the end state for this firearm, and how do I build it to optimize it for that use?
Yeah.
Yeah, we get people all the time that are like, what should my first build be? And we always say, well, what are you using it for?
Right.
And depending on that answer, the build is, completely different. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely some overlap. Like there's certain builds you can do that check a lot of boxes and you'll probably be happy with, but it might not be optimal for one specific thing. I do think generally it's better to have a wider use case if you're not sure, that kind of can fill multiple roles than being super, super specific. And then, you build this super short compact PDW through in a blackout, and that's like, oh, I want to go shoot 200 yards, and you're like having to mortar that subsonic projectile into the target. So definitely for your first build, I think it's good to have a broad kind of application set for that rifle or pistol accordingly. I would recommend a rifle for your first, but
So that's one answer for you.
yeah, and then from there you can kind of they're kind of like potato chips. You can't just have one. If there's like a specific use you want to tailor a build for, like a long range build, you can do that, and then you have kind of multiple tools in your toolbox for what you're trying to do.
So Kirk, you're a guy who you probably have a lot of different rifles or I guess pistol length guns or whatever for different cases. How many? There's no limit. Let me just first off, there's no limit to how many guns you can own. Own as many guns as you want. But if somebody said, but how many do I need? Because it's like, well, on boats, you need you need a fishing boat, you need a cruising boat, and you need like, a duck boat or something like that. But like, how many rifles have you said, well, is it 3 because of these 3 uses that overlap? Is it 4? What do you think? I mean, it's just a dumb question.
That's a super hard question to answer. I'd say it depends on the individual, right?
Yeah.
Like there's some people who just shoot competition and that's all they do, and they might need like 1 or 2. But if you're like a competition shooter who hunts and likes to do long range, that might look a little different. I think for most people, like, you know, start with like, you could easily justify 3.
3 is a good start.
Three is a good start, but I will always advocate for building more, and it's always fun to kind of play around. I have much more than 3.
Right.
Because like I said, I get something in my head. I'm like, oh, I want to build a rifle kind of with this use case in mind.
Yeah.
And go from there. But that would be like kind of, you have your dual carbine. That's like your first rifle. And then like kind of naturally people will progressively usually do something short, either an AR pistol or an SBR. And then on the other end of that, somebody will do something like more long range, either an SPR or jump up to like our M5 and AR 308.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the 3 kind of staple foods, so to speak, that'll cover a lot of use cases for people. But you know, you shouldn't limit yourself to that. If there's something you want to tailor a tool for, by all means, go ahead and do it. And like I said, I'm always going to advocate for people building more rifles. So
of course, like build more.
Yeah.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about what's new, because there's something sitting on the table here that we have to talk about. If you're thinking about doing a gun build or even just improving the gun you have, one of the places to start is the trigger. And Franklin Armory has a lot of different trigger options. One of the things being binary triggers. Could be for an AR, could be for a 10/22. They make them for several different models. Binary trigger. You pull the trigger, gun goes bang, and when you release the trigger, the gun goes bang. But you do have a selector safety, so you can actually cancel that second shot. Pretty fun way to go fast, shoot more, and upgrade your gun. Check out franklinarmory.com. Ruger. Now, you guys know Ruger. They make a lot of different things, but they actually now have the Ruger Custom Shop. And one of the guns that I'm excited about is a 10/22 from the Custom Shop, but this one's left-handed. Yes, it's a left-handed ejection on a 10/22, but it's got a lot of other great features as far as an integrated rail, a nice stock on it, mag release, paddle, a lot of different things that they've done to this gun. But they've also have a 1911 in the Custom Shop and some other things coming. So check out the Ruger Custom Shop. So Aero, I think if somebody goes, who's Aero Precision? A lot of people go, they sell ARs and AR parts and builder kits and stuff like that. But on the table here is something that is not any of those things. But you guys have a new suppressor line.
Yeah, that's not my coffee thermos. That's our new suppressor.
That's right. It's a candlestick holder.
Yeah, candlestick holder. Yeah, so this is kind of a new market we're breaking into. We've been working on it for a while. People have there's been noise about it.
Yep.
And we're kind of getting up into those final points where we're putting the final pieces on and getting ready to bring this thing to market. So this will be our kind of debut suppressor into that.
So talk about what this actually is.
So this is the Lahar 30, that's the name of it. It's a fully welded 30 cal can. It's kind of designed to fit a lot of roles, especially like in the rifle world, right? You can put it on everything from your short barrel 5.56 AR all the way up to your like 300 Win Mag hunting rifle.
Wow.
Right,
okay.
So we wanted something that was durable, had a good mounting interface, so it has a modular mounting interface. So if you're attached to a certain QD system that has support for 1 3/8 by 24 threads, you can absolutely do that. And then also have something that is quiet, gets that performance in all those use cases.
Yeah. So 30 cal can, which is for a lot of people when it comes to like a rifle type suppressor, a lot of people do that because it's a catch-all for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Going all the way up to 300 Win Mag pressures.
Yep.
Mounting options.
Yeah, so we'll have our QD for it. It's called the Mantle. Super awesome QD if you're not already invested in a system. We'll also have a direct thread option that plugs into the back of that can. And then, like I said, it has that standardized thread pitch that kind of the whole industry started to accept. So if you're already invested in something from like one of our competitors and you don't want to have to spend $1,000 on new muzzle devices for all your rifles, you can adapt the can to that and run your existing system.
And when should people start expecting to see this out in the wild, available to purchase?
We're targeting Q4.
Okay.
So we're coming up on it pretty quick. Like I said, we're just putting those final touches on, getting everything ready, make sure it's all right, and then coming to market with it. And
that's important for us too, is it's a new product for us, so we want to make sure that when it's available and people are buying it, that it's right, it's dialed, we're really happy with it. It's a product that you don't just buy on a whim. It's a commitment, an investment. So we want to make sure that we're putting a product out that we're not only happy with, but everyone else is going to be stoked on.
We have a lot of shooters working for us, and we wanted something that we would buy. If I'm coming into it, whether it be my first suppressor or my 10th, this is something that I would want to add to that collection.
Now, I like the name. It has a cool sound, Lahar, but you guys have to explain to the audience.
Oh boy.
Because it's cool.
Yeah.
What Lahar means.
Yeah, so we're in the Pacific Northwest. We're based out of the greater, we're out of Lakewood, Washington, which is in kind of just south of Seattle.
Okay.
And one of our most beautiful landmarks we have, Mount Rainier. It's a volcano. So
An active volcano.
Yeah, so it's going to erupt any day now. Hopefully not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But
any day now in the scope of Earth.
Yeah.
That could be 500 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, the robot people that take over, they might be their problem. But,
Right.
I think it's only 10,000 years overdue or something.
Yeah.
Oh, is it really great?
Whatever.
Yeah, so it's kind
Don't
of
quote me on
it's a fun little Easter egg for kind of our local residents. So Lahar is when a volcano erupts and there's glacial ice on it. When all that ice melts, that mudslide that's produced, that's a Lahar. So kind of a little Pacific Northwest Easter egg for all the Washington folks listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine that this is not where it stops. I mean, this is the start of, okay, now we do suppressors.
Yeah. This is, like I said, the debut suppressor. So this is the first one.
Okay.
We definitely have plans of attacking like a rimfire can, a pistol can, maybe some more specialized rifle cans that have a more focused use rather than this, which is more, it has a lot of good use cases, but something that's more tailored to like hunting or maybe like big bore down the road.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Other new stuff for you guys at SHOT Show, we saw a bolt action.
Yep.
That you guys are working on.
Yeah, so that's our Solace. It's a short action, so it kind of follows that philosophy of like we're here for the builder. We wanted to introduce an action that somebody at home could build without all those barriers to entry generally associated with bolt rifle building, because they kind of have this stigma. It's not like an AR where you kind of slap it together.
Right.
I hate saying slap it together because that's not at all what it is, but it's more involved and more intimidating. It's kind of an ominous thing. Like, oh, if I want to build a bolt gun, I have to send it to a gunsmith, get my action blueprinted. All that stuff, and we wanted to eliminate as much of that as possible, make it as accessible.
Okay.
We pulled feature sets in we like to see out of actions and kind of amalgamated it into this one product that we're super excited to bring to market.
So is this like a 700 like Remington type?
Kind of. So it's again a mix of feature sets. So the footprint on it is going to be Remington 700.
Okay.
It has an integral recoil lug. Takes Remington 700 triggers installed via a hanger. The barrel compatibility is Savage small shank prefit, so you can install with a barrel nut. We're also going to have them cut for like Zermatt shoulder prefits if you don't like barrel nuts.
Okay.
So, and then the bolt heads on them are going to be interchangeable. So
Wow.
You have almost infinite caliber options you can build this into as long as you can fit it in it. And we're trying to port it for 6.5 PRC, so you can get pretty big, and then like your short mags and everything will be good out of it. So. Down the road, we're looking to attack like a long action, but most people, kind of most use cases call for a short action.
Yeah.
So we wanted to kind of debut with that first. And it'll have an integral 20 MOA top rail, just a good solid action out of the box that you don't need to send to a gunsmith and put more work into.
Yeah.
Doing it right the first time, leveraging that machining capability that we're kind of known and loved for. So
Very cool.
And with the builder in mind too. I mean, that's our core customer group. So we wanted to make sure that we don't forget about those guys that, want to have a project in their garage, and it's not hard to put these together. There's this stigma around them that it's like they're scary,
Right.
But they really, I mean, it's not hard to put these bolt guns together. So we're really excited to get it out and see what people put together.
Yeah, we're already like in the office. I have 3 builds in my head planned out,
Right.
and weird stuff. Like we're really excited to see what kind of creative stuff you do, like short barreled stuff, pistols, all that stuff that you can kind of get creative with them. And it's again one of those things. There's use cases for everything. So you want to build a 22-inch Creedmoor with a carbon fiber barrel for like a lightweight, like high altitude hunting rifle. You can do that. Or if you want to just do something fun and do like a 12-inch 308 with a pistol brace, go for it. The feature set's there and the aftermarket's there. That was another big piece of it. The aftermarket's there to where you can get accessories for it and not be kind of pigeonholed into like you have to buy Aero stocks, like it has to be an Aero pattern stock. We wanted to pick stuff that already has a huge aftermarket. So if there's something you like, you can incorporate that in your build.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people who have done a bunch of AR builds and they want to move on to, they want to attempt a bolt gun build. Or maybe you're just like, I mean, I've done some of that, but I'm more of a bolt gun guy or gal, and maybe, I want to do something that's more specific to my hunting or my PRS type stuff or whatever it might be.
And speaking of PRS, not to move on from the action, but we're also going to be debuting a chassis system, which is really going to be really fun. We're known for our receivers, and it's kind of in our wheelhouse to make a aluminum chassis. And
you hear aluminum, our ears perk up.
Right, sure. We can do that.
Yeah. So that's kind of, we're like, so what are our options here? And it's like, let's just make one. And then our engineers went to town, and it's sweet.
Yeah. So we're going to be making them from forged aluminum. We're big on forging all of our receivers, including the M41s and M5s. EPCs are all forged.
Yep.
So it's going to be forged sections that we machine out, and that does a couple of things. A, it's stronger. B, it's going to pass some value onto the customer because we're not having to take a block and do all the intricate. Like, you have a rough shape that you can work with. And it's going to be 700 pattern V-block bedding, fully adjustable, and kind of set up to where you can run. If you want to run M-lock on the front, you can. Spigots for bipods, night vision bridges.
Really?
Kind of the whole gambit to where you can kind of tailor that. Like, chassis definitely have a specific playing field that they work in.
Oh, sure.
But within that, there's still separate use cases that you can kind of tailor this chassis to.
So is that going to kind of coincide with launching of the Bolt, the Action? Or how?
It's going to be close. Yeah. That's the goal. But there's a lot of moving parts, and we recently moved buildings, so that's been a whole thing. Moving heavy CNC machines and mills and all that is.
You don't just put them on a dolly.
No, you don't just
in there.
pick them up.
No. Imagine if like a dolly and an Autobot were mixed. Right. We have these giant forklifts. They're huge. I didn't know they made forklifts that big, but it's a whole process. It's like literally moving mountains.
Yeah.
Getting those
that you don't want to break.
Yeah.
Very sensitive, very precise machines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start a fight. So when we come back, we're going to talk about direct impingement, pistons, and really cause a bar fight.
There's going to be a bar fight.
Uppers, lowers, barrels, where do you start? If you're thinking about doing an AR build, one of the go-to spots is Ballistic Advantage. Go to ballisticadvantage.com. They have all the parts you need, and you can even find out some more information about how to do these builds. But it's a fun way to customize. It could be a 300 Blackout, could be a 308, could be a 6.5 Creedmoor, or you could just start with a 5.56, which is probably a really good place to start. Check out ballisticadvantage.com. The SIG Sauer P365 pistol is one of the more popular carry pistols out there. High capacity, subcompact. A lot of people love it, and there's a lot of variety out there. Well, right now, if you buy a P365 SIG Sauer pistol, you can get a 20-round box of SIG Sauer ammunition and an extra magazine for free. You just have to fill out the form at sigsauer.com. So if you're thinking about upgrading your carry gun, or you just want to get another one, the P365, you can get an extra box of ammo and a free magazine over at sigsauer.com. ATN. You know ATN for thermal, you know them for night vision, and right now they have an end of summer sale going on. So you can actually get $100 off the Thor LT, you can get $700 off the Thor 4, you can get $100 off the OTS systems, the LT and the 4T. So it's basically a thermal savings on all the kinds of thermals from ATN. Check it out at atncorp.com. There are certain things that we just like to argue about, and since you guys are just one of the authorities when it comes to AR stuff, this is just one that's so easy. It's like saying 9 versus 45 or something like that from 10 years ago. But all right, so there is such a thing as a piston gun. Mm-hmm. There's he's already like, I know he's just up. He's like, why did you have to bring this up? I was having a good day.
I'm not even going to touch this. I'm just
direct impingement.
Yeah. So
he's like, do you want the 10-minute version, the 1 hour version? So he has a PowerPoint prepared.
He pulls out a bottle of bourbon and goes, "All right, let's get after this."
So there's this man named Eugene Stoner, brilliant man.
Heard of him?
Him and God got together and decided the AR-15 needed to be direct impingement, and that's what it is. That being said, I think direct impingement gets a bad rap. There's a lot of misinformation about it, and people think they associate pistons with other systems that they, in their heads, are like, that's a more reliable system. They're not. And they're like, okay, so direct impingement's bad. So sorry to all my AK shooters. I said what I said.
I said what I said. Come at me.
I'm not sorry.
Yeah, if you want to mud test your AK against one of our ARs, like we'll go toe for toe on that.
Okay.
But yeah, so direct impingement, if you build them right and you maintain the rifles right, which maintenance is important on any platform. All joking aside, direct impigement's fine. It works great. It's a good system.
Yeah.
And I think that again, it just gets a bad rap because of like the very early M16s and all that kind of the lore that was built around that. Like these are unreliable rifles, and they're really not. Like we run ARs hard, we run them to failure. They, there's not really a situation where you're going to be like, oh, I wish I would have gotten a piston gun. And,
Right.
Pistons have their place. There's guys that do pistons well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dispute that, but if you ask me personally, I'm going to side with direct impingement in most cases.
So the advantages of DI, for those who are not as familiar.
Yeah. So it's more of a standard system. That's kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
It's not like you're having to get switched to something proprietary. There's a whole kind of field of harmonics that we could really break into on that. As far as DI versus piston, generally, DI guns are kind of accepted to have better harmonic properties.
Yeah.
And then the other big piece of it is, it's proven. A lot of these like retrofit piston kits may not be as proven. Like it's piston and people gravitate towards it because of that word, but it may not necessarily be a better system. Again, not saying they're all bad. There's people that do piston kits that are great. But it's just kind of it's this misnomer that's kind of like, again, really rooted in this lore of like AR-15 versus AK-47. And people are like, AK-47s, you can do all this stuff to them that you can't. But it's like that kind of folk legend that kind of that was built around it. And again, not saying AKs are bad rifles either.
Look,
Yeah.
Kirk, the AK, you can put it in a tub of vanilla pudding for 5 years. You take it out, you freeze it, and then you let an elephant walk on it, and it'll still shoot.
Yeah, and AKs are reliable rifles. Like I'm not going to dispute that, but it's not because of the piston system solely. And AR-15s are reliable systems, and it's not because of the direct impingement solely.
Well, and look, semi-auto guns, mag-fed semi-auto guns in general, there's a lot of ways to screw it up, especially if you give it to an 18-year-old and say, go walk around the jungle with it or whatever, and then tell him, this is the same kid who you're like, clean up your room, but he hasn't cleaned up his room. And you're like, you need to take care of this. And they're like, right, roger that. So then it becomes, it's unreliable because of whatever, right? There's just so many stories there.
And they do get like DI guns, they do appear dirtier. Like I'm not gonna dispute that. I'm very like, I like to think about things. They do run dirtier, but ARs can put up, if you lubricate them properly, they can put up with a lot before they need to be cleaned. Like it looks dirty, it's not pretty, but it's still, they run fine.
Just pour more lube.
Pour more lube. Right. Like you can run thousands of rounds through ARs without them needing to be cleaned. I don't recommend that, but if you have to, like it's not going to be, as long as you keep the lubrication up, they work good. And AR-15 is something that I preach and preach and preach is the reason they're so reliable is they're a sealed system. Like when you have a dust cover closed on an AR and a magazine inserted, there's not a lot of debris that can really get in there because everything's so tight.
Sure.
And that kind of insulates it from a lot of the stuff. That's why I made the mud test comment. There's tons of online videos that go viral, and it's always it's a catalyst for starting verbal arguments on the internet. That's
what I'm saying. Let's start a fight here.
Yeah. So like other systems, AKs particular, if they have a dust cover too, but in general, they can get more debris introduced into them that can be problematic, right? And where the AR really shines is because of that dust cover and because it's a sealed system. That's kind of a segue for like people that are like, oh, I don't want a dust cover on my AR. Yeah, you probably should. I recommend it. Again, Eugene Stoner put it on the rifle for a reason. Forward assist came later, like you can debate that, but the dust cover was on the original ones. Yeah. So that was definitely an intended part.
Yeah, if you shoot enough or you do classes and also if you travel a little bit and shoot in different environments, then you start seeing like the dust cover like, maybe it's not dusty in South Louisiana because everything's wet here. But if you go to Arizona and you go to do a classic gun site, it's nothing but dust. It's just dusty all day.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too with like maintenance and lubrication too. People go like, well, what's the best lube? I'm like, well, where are you at? What I'm going to recommend for someone who lives in like northern Alaska near the Arctic Circle is not going to be what I'm going to recommend for somebody in Arizona.
Do you even need to lube guns here? everything is just
Well,
like
you lube it because everything rusts immediately rusts.
Yeah, it's not for the lubricity, it's for the rust.
You go outside, you shoot your gun, you come in, you wipe off the rust.
Yeah, so that's a big thing too, is just kind of like, you know, and again, people need to like think and make decisions for themselves. You test the lubrication you're using and the maintenance schedule you're using for where you are. There's no one universal answer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like it's like motor oils, same thing, there's weights.
Sure.
Gun lube is very similar in that regard. Like I'm not going to run a super thick lube if I'm near the Arctic Circle where it's going to just cake everything up.
Now that being said, we're on lube, which is a whole nother can of worms. But here's my thing. And Kirk may be the guy who does this, so I'm sorry. But like, I don't understand people like inventing their own lubes when there are
he does
like dozens of gun lubes out there. You could find one or two that you like. Like they're like, I'm gonna have a little mix of Tabasco with some motor oil and.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a little shout out to Chad at School of the American Rifle. I use his recipe, and that's just because I go through so much of it.
You're spot on.
Yeah,
he's got his like,
and it works great. Ask him. It works great. It works great.
Is it based on any sort of actual gun lube? Or
it's I'll like full
you go to
transparency.
AutoZone?
Yeah, you go to AutoZone. It's 530 motor oil and red bearing grease.
See?
But again, and he'll tell you this guy's super knowledgeable about AR-15s. He'll tell you the same thing though. You have to use it where you are, right? It's not the perfect answer for everybody, but yeah, I go through so much of it and it works really well. I've ran classes where it just stays put. I shoot a lot of suppressed.
Okay.
So suppressors are notoriously horrible at like burning lube off and drying guns out and making them
throwing
gross.
all the gas back through.
So that formula I've had super good luck with. I've ran classes at Thunder Ranch with it suppressed, and it's always been done right by me, and it stays put and works good. But again, it's not the one answer.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, I was like, no, I don't need that. He's like, just trust me. And he threw it on for a class that I did at Thunder Ranch actually, and my gun ran perfect. And I was like, what oil it is.
Yeah. So you know, Chad at SOTAR, give him full credit there. He kind of popularized that, and it works good. So again, try it where you're at. But
are there any other, since you guys are the AR guys, are there any other maybe little tips, whether it's a build thing or just the gun running correctly? You probably have those FAQs that come in from customers where they commonly maybe make a mistake, or they have this common, there's this question every week, here's another one of those questions that we have to answer.
It's an easy one is lubrication. We see that a lot, and that solves a lot of issues. Yeah. Just lubing a gun properly.
The guns like to be lubricated. It's a mechanical system. A lot of people are like, oh, run them dry. I'm like, it's really hard to over lube them. Yeah. I'm very overzealous. You can ask him. All my guns are pretty disgusting. You like need to wear gloves to touch them if you're taking them apart.
You wear a poncho when you start shooting.
It's like,
yeah. Well, the lube I use stays put pretty well, so that's not usually an issue. It's, you know, they like to be ran wet. You're never going to be within reason. I mean, if you're going to dunk it in a tank of 530, you're probably going to have issues.
Right.
But like, you know, on your bolt carrier specifically, like get overzealous with it. Like that cam pin channel, I fill that thing in a lube, and I've never had issues. And again, to prefix that, like where you are environmentally, the shooting conditions you're in, how you're shooting, those are going to be kind of affect this. Yeah. So, you know, try different things, find out what works for you. And kind of go from there. Again, there's no one right answer. Otherwise, we would have, again, one product that everyone kind of uses.
Yeah. What about builds? Is there one or two, three places that people are always kind of running into problems or have questions to you guys on?
A lot of it's just decision making, because again, there's so many choices and again, opinions. So it just depends. For like new builders, a lot of people get really wrapped around things. Like barrel length is a really funny one that I like to go on a tangent about. You have the barrel length of the week that everyone's doing. And they're like, oh, you know, I like do this and it's like splitting hairs. I'm like, just to start, do a 16-inch barrel with a mid-length gas system. If you're doing 5.56, you'll be okay. And I recommend doing 5.56 for your first build too. Just because it's so prevalent. And,
don't go with the 6.5 Grindle with a 9-inch barrel. Weirdness.
Because a lot of it too, especially if you're trying to like get proficient, 5.56 is great because it's so common. You can actually, you know, you're not financially ruining yourself to go take a class. And I recommend everybody go get training, right? Like if you have a accredited school near you. I know you mentioned Gunsight, and they're very reputable. They were one of the first, Thunder Ranch as well. We have a very good relationship with them. And
there's a lot of good trainers out there these days.
That's
a lot of good schools.
That's something that we really harp on too. Is we get a lot of questions about things, and it's like, you just go learn how to use this thing properly, learn how, how it works, what offsets are. It's kind of important. Learn how to use this tool.
I think that there are people who can have opinions about, how the gun should be built and the accessories and stuff to put on a gun. And then all that goes out the window the first time you go spend 2, 3, 4 days running the gun.
Yes.
And you're like, and it's personal preference, but like maybe I freaking hate this vertical foregrip I put on the gun all of a sudden, or the way my sling's set up, or
all of a sudden the rifle starts getting really heavy, and you're like, I need more push-ups.
I don't know why I mounted this cappuccino machine to my M-lock rail.
Right.
So it's that's a big thing, and again, that goes back to use case. Like you need to use the rifle how you built it to be used, and learn that stuff. I don't consider myself to be an expert. I'm always a student, and I'm always learning and trying new things. And I think you need to have that kind of mindset going into it, rather than oh, I'm settled on this. This is what I'm going to use, and then not try to improve on that.
Yeah.
I'd also say this: if you can, start taking classes from different people, because I think that most people, their first class, they're usually going to have a good experience. They're usually going to go, "Wow, that was amazing! It's the best thing ever," because this is this person's formula for whether it's pistol, rifle, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, but there are other ways.
Yeah. I think that's important. And again, this kind of goes back to thinking for yourself. You learn from different instructors to kind of find the system that you either align with most or works best for you. Again, I love Thunder Ranch, but there's a guy locally we use, Kevin up at Full Spectrum Training. He's a great guy, and we went there, and it was a different perspective.
And you kind of take pieces of each thing, and you're like, wait, that makes sense. That works for me.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of my piece on that. Is there's no there's so many opinions out there, and everything's like that. I don't want anyone taking what I say as gospel.
Please
don't. There's different opinions, and again, I don't know if any one person's right. It's one of those things, and I think having that growth mindset and to maximize the potential of this community and that kind of knowledge base we have, it's important to have that type of mindset when we approach these things.
Yeah,
I'm always down to have gun conversations. Challenge my opinions, please.
One of the fun things about guns is why this can even exist. Why in the world would Gun Talk Radio be on the air for 27 years, or why we can do all these years and years? And because a lot of people go, you'd run out of things to talk about. Well, here's the thing about guns. We just spent a half hour and we talked about building guns, which is one aspect of. We talked about shooting guns. We talked about the technicality of all these different aspects. There's so many ways to enjoy guns. Collecting, people collect them. I mean, there's just so many avenues.
Something I always tell people is and then they get new and it's very intimidating. And I'm like, it's intimidating. Yes, it's intimidating for me still. I'm going to die not knowing everything, and I'm totally okay with that. Because once you learn everything about ARs, and I still don't know everything about ARs. Once you learn everything about ARs, then you can go into there's handguns, there's historic stuff is a whole rabbit hole. That's a lifetime worth of study for just one thing. I know guys who have spent their whole lives just on M1s. Right. And it's they know more about, they've forgotten more about M1s than I know about guns, period, right? It's just so it's one of those things it is intimidating, but don't get intimidated by it. It's, that's the nature of it. So, always ask good questions. I think dialogue's super important.
And I think we get caught up in the world we know, but I'd encourage people to kind of step out. If you're okay, if you're the guy who's listening to Gun Talk Nation and you're an excellent trap shooter, skeet shooter, sporting clays, and you go, ARs are kind of interesting. I don't know. Take a little walk down that trail that you haven't taken before. Explore that path.
That's the really cool thing about this hobby too, is it's very easy to avoid burnout because of that. I have I'm a trap shooter. I do, and I'll get on little tangents. 1 week I'll be really into these for a few months, and I kind of dive into that and do all that. I recently had an AK kick. I drove Matt crazy, wouldn't shut up about him, and then now I'm kind of back doing my thing, and so there's so much to do that you can kind of again spend a lifetime learning and never really get bored of it.
Yeah,
it's cool too because some of the skills transfer as well. He took me out trap shooting for the first time, and I was like, oh, I got this.
Yeah,
and pretty fun.
Yeah, trap shooting is one of those ones that's super intimidating. You see, if you shoot that little disc while it's flying out of there, I'm like, no, trust me. It sounds like Jedi stuff. Just look at the bird. It's like hitting a baseball. Look at the ball and bring the bat to it.
And then as the gun crosses over it, when you can't see it anymore, that's when you should shoot. Wait, what?
Yeah.
And it's always that sport's very rewarding because again, or any of these things that are like difficult, like perceived as very difficult. When someone does it, and they're like, "Oh wow, I can do that," and it's watching that kind of light in their face is like one of the most rewarding things for me.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks for being on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming down. The Build Box show is going to be super cool. We'll be talking more about it, so be sure to tune in for that one. But we'll see you guys all next time on Gun Talk Nation.